Daisy Moreno never believed in heroes. Not after life taught her to survive in silence. But when a late-night trip ends in gunfire and fear, she's pulled from the wreckage by Officer Matheo Cruz, a man with calm eyes and wounds of his own. As trauma binds them and quiet glances turn into something deeper, Daisy must confront the truth. Is she falling for the man who saved her, or for the man who sees her? Hello family, welcome to Storytime with Imzi. Please subscribe and like, it means the world to us. Also share this video to your friends and loved ones and turn on post notifications so you don't miss future videos from us. Thank you as you do so. Sit back and relax as we dive into the story. The buzzing hum of the fluorescent lights inside the corner store was the only sound that broke the stillness of the late hour. Daisy Moreno stood at the refrigerated section, her fingers wrapped around a carton of oat milk, debating if she even needed it. Midnight cravings and insomnia, an exhausting combo she hadn't figured out how to cure. The bell above the front door jingled, sharp and loud in the quiet. She glanced up briefly, saw two men walk in, one with a hood pulled low, the other scanning the aisles like he was counting shadows. Her instincts prickled. Something about their presence made the air feel heavier. She put the milk down. "Hey," one of them said suddenly, too loud, too fast, and pulled a gun from his waistband. The cashier froze. A carton of gum slipped from the counter and clattered to the floor. "Everyone down," the hooded man shouted. Daisy ducked instinctively behind a shelf of paper towels. Her heart pounded in her ears like a war drum. She couldn't move, couldn't think. Her body just locked up. A muffled sob escaped someone closer to the register. The robbers barked more commands, their voices jittery and frantic. Daisy pressed her hands to her mouth to stay silent. Someone screamed. A thud. A gunshot cracked like lightning. She flinched hard, her knees giving out as she slid lower, curling in on herself in the shadow of the shelves. She was going to die here. In a store. On a stupid milk run. The next minute stretched into something unmeasurable. Then, shouting outside. Tires. Sirens. A blur of movement. Glass shattered at the front. Daisy didn't see what happened next, only heard it. Boots pounding the floor, another yell, this time with authority. Police. Drop the weapon. More shots. Chaos. Then a hand on her arm. Firm, gloved, but gentle. Hey, you're okay. I've got you, a low voice said. She looked up into the face of a man in black tactical gear, helmet and all. His brown eyes locked onto hers with startling clarity, steady calm, like he was a lighthouse in a storm. Can you walk? He asked. She nodded, though her legs trembled beneath her. He didn't wait, just slipped an arm around her back and guided her out, shielding her body with his own as they moved through the ruined store. The cold night air hit her like a wave. Blue and red lights spun across the sidewalk. Someone handed her a blanket. Her breath came in short, hiccuping gasps. Stay with me, okay? The officer said, crouching beside her now. She looked at him again, really looked. Sweat dampened his hairline. His mouth was set in a line that looked too familiar with worry. But his eyes, they were kind. She found her voice barely. What's your name? He gave a small smile. Matheo. Officer Matheo Cruz. Daisy swallowed, the taste of fear still clinging to her tongue. She should have said thank you, or asked what happened, or looked away. But all she could do was stare at him, the man who had just pulled her out of hell. And for some reason, in the middle of all the noise, she felt like something in her life had just shifted. And there was no going back. The smell of antiseptic and coffee lingered in Daisy's apartment, even though she hadn't touched either in 2 days. The coffee sat cold in its mug, abandoned on the windowsill. The emergency room had patched her up, a sprained wrist, some cuts, minor bruising. But they didn't treat the part that kept replaying the gunshot in her head like a skipping vinyl. She sat curled up on her couch, knees pulled to her chest, sketchbook open on her lap. But the pencil in her hand just hovered, refusing to touch the paper. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the robbers shaking hands, and then, behind them, Matheo's, steady and firm, wrapped around her arm, pulling her out of the dark. The knock came lightly. 3 soft taps. Too polite to be anyone she expected. She didn't move at first. Then it came again, a bit firmer. Daisy set the sketchbook down and padded cautiously to the door. No peephole. Her fingers hovered over the deadbolt. Miss Moreno? a familiar voice said, muffled through the door. Her breath caught. She turned the lock. There he was. Officer Matheo Cruz, in jeans and a dark navy jacket this time, not tactical gear. He looked taller than she remembered. Maybe because he wasn't crouched beside her, trying to keep her from falling apart. The badge around his neck gleamed subtly, a reminder of the line he walked between her world and his. I didn't mean to startle you, he said, his voice warm, steady. Just doing a wellness check. Department policy for survivors involved in high-stress incidents. She nodded, stepping aside without thinking. You can come in. He hesitated for only a second, then entered. Her apartment was small and quiet, wood floors, warm tones, art supplies scattered in organized chaos. The kind of space that felt lived in by someone who spent more time in her head than anywhere else. I didn't think you'd actually come, Daisy said, brushing a loose curl behind her ear. Well, Matheo said, glancing around before resting against the edge of her dining table. I asked for this one. Told my supervisor it'd help the report. You're lying, she said before she could stop herself. She blushed. I mean, maybe not lying, just that didn't sound very procedural. Matheo smiled, just barely. Maybe not, but I wanted to make sure you were okay. Really okay. Daisy leaned against the back of her couch, arms crossed. I'm managing. I saw your hands shaking when I found you. That kind of fear doesn't go away in 2 days. No, she admitted, voice quieter now. It doesn't. Silence settled between them. But it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that let breath return to a room. You ever talked to anyone about what happened before? He asked gently. Like this? No, not really. I usually just draw it out. He glanced at the sketchbook still sitting on the couch. Can I see? She blinked. You want to see my art? You don't have to show me. I just meant what I said. I want to make sure you're okay. Daisy picked up the book and held it to her chest. Then, without quite knowing why, she flipped it open to the page she had drawn the night before, lines tentative, half-erased, unfinished. It was a face. His face. Not perfect. A little too sharp around the jaw. The eyes too soft. But it was him. Matheo stared at it for a moment, then looked at her, and didn't say anything. Daisy's heart thundered in her ears. I didn't mean to. It just kept coming out. He met her eyes then, something unreadable flickering there. Sometimes the things we see in crisis are clearer than anything else. She exhaled, long and slow. Is that a cop thing? He smiled. Maybe. Or maybe it's just a human thing. As he stood to go, he paused at the door. I'll check in again. If that's okay. Daisy nodded. Yeah, it is. The door closed softly behind him. And for the first time since that awful night, Daisy felt like she could breathe again. The pencils moved faster now. Not in control, not exactly. Daisy's hand worked on instinct, lines flowing with a kind of feverish purpose. Sketch after sketch filled the pages of her new book. A shoulder, a jawline, hands strong, scarred, protective. Eyes. Always the eyes. She stopped, stared at what she'd drawn. Another sketch of him. Matheo. It had been a week since his visit. A week of too many thoughts and not enough sleep. He hadn't come back yet. She hadn't expected him to, not really. But the memory of his voice, his calm presence, the way he looked at her like she wasn't broken, it lingered. She closed the sketchbook and stuffed it in her bag. Outside, the city hummed. She needed air. A change of scenery. Something besides the four walls of her apartment and the echo of a gunshot that still made her flinch when she heard loud noises. The little bookstore on Fairmont Avenue was quiet, her kind of quiet. Not silence, but soft shuffling, pages turning, the occasional hushed greeting. She moved toward the back, toward the art section. As she reached up for a book on classical figure drawing, her fingers brushed against someone else's. Oh, sorry. Her voice caught. Because standing there, book in hand, was Matheo. For a second, neither of them moved. Hey, he said, as if bumping into her in a bookstore was the most natural thing in the world. Daisy blinked. Hey. He glanced at the shelf, then back at her. You still draw, huh? She smiled, a real one this time. Can't seem to stop lately. There was a pause. He was in jeans again, a gray Henley, a leather band around his wrist. He looked less like a cop today, more like someone reachable. You hungry? He asked. Daisy hesitated. Like food hungry? Matheo gave a soft laugh. Yeah, there's a cafe next door. Nothing fancy. But they've got these cinnamon rolls the size of your face. She considered him. His offer. The way her chest wasn't tightening in fear, but fluttering in a way she hadn't felt in years. Okay, she said. But I get to judge your coffee order. Fair. The cafe smelled like warm sugar and espresso. They sat in a booth by the window, sun spilling through the glass, casting faint shadows across their table. So, Matheo said, picking at the edge of his napkin. You draw people mostly? Daisy nodded. Faces. Bodies. Emotions when I can catch them. It's like, if I get the lines just right, I can hold a moment forever. He looked at her, and something shifted behind his eyes. Like her words had struck a chord deeper than either of them expected. Did you always want to be an artist? He asked. Yeah, she said softly. Even when I was little. I used to draw my dreams so I wouldn't forget them. He smiled. That's kind of amazing. She looked down. What about you? Always wanted to be a cop. No, he said, almost too quickly. My dad was. Thought I'd try anything else. But when he passed, I don't know. I felt like I had to finish something he started. Daisy didn't speak. She just listened. Matheo looked out the window, quiet for a moment. Sometimes I wonder if I did it for him, or because I needed to prove I could be someone who ran toward the danger, not away from it. Their eyes met again, and something passed between them. Not attraction, not yet. But understanding. Recognition. Daisy pulled her sketchbook from her bag and hesitated. Then, slowly, she turned it toward him, flipped a few pages, and landed on the one from earlier that week. Him. Again. She didn't look at his face, just watched his hands. You didn't have to show me that, he said. I wanted to, she replied. Matheo nodded once. You see things most people miss. I'm trying to see clearly, she said, her voice almost a whisper. I'm tired of being afraid of everything. He looked at her, long and careful. You're not broken, Daisy. Fear doesn't mean you're weak. It means you survived something that should have shattered you. And somehow, in the quiet clink of coffee cups and the low murmur of strangers around them, her heart started to uncoil, just a little. Daisy wasn't used to company. Her world had always been made of stillness. Long hours of drawing, muted playlists, the scratch of pencil on paper as her main conversation. But lately there was a new rhythm. A message from Matheo in the mornings, short, kind, unassuming. You sleep okay? Coffee or tea today? Sometimes a joke. Sometimes just an emoji. She replied every time. And now, here he was again, seated on her small living room floor, leaning back on one arm, flipping through one of her older sketchbooks with the kind of care that made her chest ache. You were bolder with ink back then, he said, studying a drawing from 2 years ago, a stark, thick-lined self-portrait where half her face faded into shadows. I was angry more often, she said, not looking at him. He nodded like he understood, like that answer made perfect sense. Their friendship, if that's what this was, had slipped into something comfortable. Too comfortable. Walks through the park, him swinging by after late shifts. Daisy cooking out of nervous energy and pretending she hadn't set the table for 2 hours before he arrived. But comfort had a dangerous edge. Because now she noticed things. The way his laugh always came a half second after hers, like he waited to make sure it was okay to smile. The small scar at his temple, barely visible unless the light hit just right. The way he never sat with his back to a door. A habit she realized was more survival than preference. She noticed because she wanted to. You're quiet, Matheo said, glancing up. Just thinking. Dangerous, he teased, then softened. Want to talk about it? She hesitated. Do you ever wonder if what we feel after something traumatic is real? Or just reaction? Matheo closed the sketchbook. You mean like how sometimes people confuse gratitude with connection? Her breath caught. He leaned forward slightly, elbows on his knees. Yeah, I think about that more than I should. There it was. The thing between them, finally named, at least partially. Daisy folded her arms across her chest. I don't want to be some story you tell later. The girl I rescued who got attached. You're not, he said quietly. I don't see you like that. Then how do you see me? She asked. He didn't answer right away. His eyes searched hers, and for a second she thought he might say something important. But then he stood. I should go. Early shift tomorrow. Daisy nodded, disappointed, though she didn't say it. At the door, he paused. Daisy, the night I pulled you out of that store, you weren't the only one who felt something change. She looked up at him. He gave a faint, lopsided smile, the kind that didn't quite reach his eyes. I just don't know what to do with that yet. Then he left. And for the first time in weeks, Daisy didn't pick up her sketchbook. She just sat there, heart heavy, eyes on the door, trying to figure out where exactly the line between safety and love had started to blur. It happened so fast. Daisy had gone out for art supplies. Nothing special, just pencils, fresh paper, a new kneaded eraser. But as she turned onto her street, she froze. A man shouting. Another man backing away, hands raised. Daisy's pulse skyrocketed. Something metallic glinted in the man's hand. A knife? A crowbar? Her vision tunneled. Breath locked in her throat. Move. Go. Do something. But her legs wouldn't listen. The sidewalk shifted beneath her feet like it had turned to water. The weight of that first night, the store, the gunshots, the cold grip of panic, slammed into her like a wave. She didn't scream. She didn't run. She just stood there, shaking. Someone else called 911. Voices shouted, feet pounded. She heard someone yell her name, far away, familiar, but it didn't reach her. Then hands were on her shoulders. Not rough. Not grabbing. Just steady. Warm. Daisy. It's me. You're safe. The voice cracked the surface. She blinked, and Matheo's face came into focus. No helmet. No uniform. Just him. Eyes wide, lips pressed into a line of worry. Breathe with me, he said, gently pulling her into a kneel on the sidewalk. Come on. In through your nose. Out through your mouth. Her lungs obeyed, barely. His hand found hers. She clutched it like a lifeline. When her breathing finally slowed, she whispered, I couldn't move. You were scared, he said. It's okay. No, she said, shaking her head. It's not. It keeps happening. I'm trying to be better, but I'm not. I'm still frozen in that store. And every time I see you, it reminds me. Of that night. Of everything. He stiffened, just slightly. She kept going. I don't even know what this is between us, she said. If I'm clinging to you because you saved me, or because I actually... She stopped herself. Couldn't say the word. Or because I'm confused. Matheo looked at her for a long time. His face was unreadable, like he was building a wall between every emotion trying to come through. Then he stood. Slowly. Carefully. I've been asking myself the same question. That stung. She felt it in her chest. He ran a hand through his hair. I care about you, Daisy. That's not the question. The question is if what we feel is real or just wrapped up in trauma and adrenaline. That kind of thing doesn't go away on its own. Her eyes burned. I don't want to lose you, she said, so softly she barely heard it herself. Matheo took a step back. I think we both need space to figure this out, he said. Separate from what happened. From who we were that night. She nodded, but her throat was tight. So what, we just stop? No, he said. But we stop pretending this is simple. And then, like before, he turned and left. But this time, he didn't look back. Daisy didn't cry that night. She thought she might. She thought she'd shatter like glass the second Matheo walked away, leaving her alone on the sidewalk with a heart caught between what was and what might have been. But instead, something else rose in her. Resolve. The next morning, she stood at her small mirror and stared at the woman looking back. Pale, hollow-eyed, tired, but not broken. I'm still here, she whispered to herself. And I'm not going to stay frozen. That day, she signed up to volunteer at a local community center that offered after-school programs. Art therapy for teens, kids with anxiety, or just too much energy and not enough space. The program director looked skeptical at first. You ever work with kids? No, Daisy said. But I know what it's like to feel stuck. To need somewhere safe to put your pain. He nodded. And that was that. The first few sessions were clumsy, crayon fights, torn sketchbooks, a fourth grader named Evan who called her Miss Mumbles because she talked too softly. But slowly they settled into a rhythm. The kids responded to her honesty, her stillness, her way of seeing things others overlooked. She wasn't fixing them. She was simply showing them how to pour things out onto paper, so the weight didn't stay in their chests. And maybe in doing that, she was doing the same for herself. Weeks passed. Matheo didn't call. He didn't text either, not even his usual, "You okay?" or midnight memes that made her laugh when she didn't want to. At first it hurt. Then it stung. Then it just became silence. Heavy and strange. One afternoon she saw him, across the street, outside a diner with a fellow officer. His laugh came easy. His shoulders relaxed. She ducked into a bookstore before he saw her. Something twisted in her gut, but it wasn't jealousy. It wasn't heartbreak either. It was grief, for the closeness that had once felt like a lifeline. For the version of her that thought love could only come wrapped in rescue. Later that night, she stood before a blank canvas in her studio space. Not her sketchbook, not lines this time. Paint. Bold. Messy. She dipped her brush into deep, bruised blue. Then warm red. Then smoke gray. And she painted them both, herself and Matheo, not realistically, not even as full figures. Just emotion. Color. Distance and closeness and longing and silence. And space between them. But it wasn't empty. It was waiting. That weekend, after class let out, Evan, the loudmouthed fourth grader, handed her a crumpled drawing of a fire-breathing dragon. "I made him because dragons look scary, but they're actually smart," he said. "Like you." Daisy knelt and smiled. "Thanks, Evan. That's the best compliment I've had in weeks." And for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel like she was surviving. She felt like she was growing. It started with the smell. Smoke. Thick, sharp, clinging to the back of Daisy's throat before she even saw the orange flicker through the hallway windows. She was packing up after her Saturday art session at the community center. The kids had gone, the supplies were half-sorted, and her phone buzzed with a voicemail from a number she didn't recognize. But then came the second thing, the alarm. Loud, blaring, urgent. Daisy spun around. The air was already haze-thick. Fire. The staff scrambled, voices raised. One of the counselors ran past her, shouting something she couldn't catch. Then a girl appeared at the end of the hall, Mia, one of the shy kids from the art group, frozen in place, wide-eyed and coughing. "Hey!" Daisy called, racing toward her. She dropped her bag, grabbed a damp art smock, and knelt in front of Mia. "Put this over your mouth, okay? We're going to get out. Hold my hand." Mia's hand was tiny, shaking in hers, but it held tight. They pushed through the smoke, turning corners, counting exits in their heads. Daisy's lungs burned. She didn't stop. Outside, flashing lights painted the block in color. EMTs, fire trucks yelling. Everything moved fast and surreal. As Daisy stumbled out with Mia, a firefighter rushed over to take the girl. Someone called her name. And then, "Daisy!" She turned and her heart stuttered. Matheo. Fully geared, bulletproof vest, earpiece in, panic in his eyes. The moment he saw her, his expression collapsed into something fierce and raw. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head. "I'm fine. Mia's safe. The others too. I think." Her knees wobbled. He caught her by the shoulders. "You ran back in," he said, not a question. She was trapped. I couldn't leave her. Matheo stared at her for a moment. Then he pulled her into his chest, just for a second, holding her like he'd been holding his breath for weeks. "You're unbelievable," he said quietly. "Why? Because I didn't freeze this time?" she replied, voice muffled against his shoulder. He pulled back to look at her. "No," he said. "Because you didn't wait to be saved." She blinked. Her throat tightened. "I didn't even think. I just moved." "That's what courage looks like," he said. And then they just stood there. Sirens in the background. Her hand still faintly stained with charcoal. His vest warm under her palms. So much unspoken between them. "Why are you here?" she asked finally. "You weren't supposed to be here." His eyes searched hers. "Dispatch called in a fire near the center. I was blocks away. And when I heard where it was, I didn't think. I just moved." The same words. They both heard it at once, the echo of something deeper than fear or duty. Daisy took a shaky breath. "You told me you weren't sure if what we had was real." Matheo nodded, jaw tight. "And now?" she asked. He exhaled like something inside him had been holding on for too long. "Now I know it is. Because I didn't come here as a cop," he said. "I came here because I couldn't not come to you." 2 weeks later, the fire was old news. The center was undergoing repairs. Classes had moved to borrowed spaces, supplies in cardboard boxes and borrowed bins. The air still smelled faintly of smoke, but the kids didn't mind. Neither did Daisy. She stood in the middle of a small gallery downtown, her gallery, or at least a corner of it. A community show, hosted by a friend of a friend, who had seen her work and offered her space on a quiet Thursday night. The walls were lined with sketches, brushstrokes, watercolors, fragments of her heart made visible. Some were dark, some chaotic, but many pulsed with color and softness. And then there was the painting. Near the back wall, centered under a spotlight. Two figures, abstract, faceless, but unmistakably human. One reaching out from shadow, the other wrapped in color. Between them, a ribbon of smoke and red light, distance, danger, memory, but their hands almost touched. Almost. People passed by it with curious expressions, heads tilted. A few whispered. One person cried. But Daisy stood a few feet away, quiet, unsure. Then the door opened, and he walked in. Matheo Cruz. Clean-shaven, jacket open, no badge in sight. Just a man with dark eyes and a heart he no longer guarded. Daisy's breath caught. He saw her, and smiled. It wasn't a big, sweeping thing, just soft. Steady, like the first time he knelt beside her on that terrible night. Only now, there was no fear between them. Just truth. You came, she said, heart fluttering. I told myself I wouldn't miss this, he replied. No matter what. He looked around at the artwork, then at the painting on the wall. That one, he started. Is us, she finished. He nodded. I figured. Daisy turned toward him. I painted it before the fire. Before I even knew what I wanted. What do you want now? She hesitated, then stepped forward, closing the space between them. I don't want to be saved, she said. Not anymore. I know. And I'm not in love with the man who rescued me from a corner store. He tilted his head. No, she said, smiling now. I'm in love with the man who stayed. Even when it was hard. Even when I was a mess. Even when he was. Matheo's eyes softened. His hands reached for hers. And this time, there was no tremble in her fingers. Only warmth. I love you too, Daisy, he said. Not rushed. Not desperate. Just real. They kissed. Not in dramatic silence, not beneath fireworks, but under fluorescent lights and the low buzz of gallery chatter, between paintings of pain and healing. And for the first time, it wasn't about who saved whom. It was about choosing each other. And that made all the difference.